You're listening to a Mint podcast brought to you by HT Smartcast.
Hi, I'm Leslie DeMonte, a senior associate editor from Mint.
And I'm Jayant Kolla, founder and partner at Convergence Catalyst. Welcome to AI Rising, where we discuss the latest, the greatest, the myths and concerns in AI.
So that you can understand and make it work better for you. Now let's begin making AI fun for you.
AI Rising.
So Jayant, good to see you back.
Good to see you again, Leslie.
How was the weekend? The usual question.
Oh, this weekend, compared to all others, was quite calm. I did nothing but catch up with friends and take rest. No, actually, Saturday, I think I had a couple of meetings, but relatively still calmer compared to the previous few weekends.
Correct. And we were supposed to go,
we were supposed to. I slept through it, man. I slept through both Saturday and Sunday in the mornings. I couldn't make it to the breakfast right.
I thought as much. We have a person in the background, viewers and listeners, but that person is no ordinary person. A very special guest, Mr. Rajendra Pawar. Rajendra Pawar is chairman and co-founder of the NIIT Group, comprising NIIT Limited, which is a skills and talent development company, and NIIT Technologies, which was an IT services company and was acquired by Coforge. He is now involved in running the not-for-profit NIIT University, which was founded in 2009. Mr. Pawar is a recipient of the Padma Bhushan and was NASSCOM chairman from 2011 to 2012. Among his many accomplishments, Mr. Pawar has been a part of the late PM Vajpayee's National Task Force 1998, has served as a member of the PM Manmohan Singh's National Council on Skills Development between 2009 and 2014, and is currently the chairman of the NASSCOM Cyber Security Task Force set up by PM Modi. So you see, he's no ordinary guest out here. Welcome, Mr. Pawar.
Welcome, Mr. Pawar.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
You have so many hats on. So, we could ask you probably every question under the sun, and I'm sure you're in a position to answer that. But before we, talk about NIIT, the EdTech sector, skills, upskilling, I'm sure people want to hear a lot about it from you. Jayant and I have got this habit of, talking about the developments in the week. And I think the most important development of this week has been, everybody knows that. Any guesses, Jayant?
Are you talking about Indian elections or are you talking about Musk and Jan LeCun spat?
I guess in this particular case, the elections outweigh every other development.
Absolutely.
It's India's largest democracy, a lot, and Modi government of the last 10 years has been doing a lot in the tech sector. So that is of particular interest. Talking since we run this AI Rising podcast, of particular interest is obviously the AI mission, for which PM Modi has already allocated something in the range of 11,000 crore or something. And even for the quantum computing mission. And there are a lot being done in the field of technology, whether it is IoT, whether it is blockchain, whether it is 5G. It is just massive. And on the skills development, which Mr. Pawar will tell us a lot more about that, on the cyber security stuff of it. Mr. Pawar, your initial thoughts on this third term, in all probability, unless something really drastic happens, Mr. Modi will be serving his third term very soon. From a continuity point of view on the tech kind of missions that have been happening in this country, can you give us your quick thoughts on what you feel about it?
So I think first and foremost, I would say the biggest event of the century is the rainfall you're having in Bangalore. It's
Yes.
After 100 odd years, I don't know how many years you have this kind of rainfall.
Right.
I wonder whether climate change is a thing that's happening over time or it's been there before. But nonetheless, I think for India at this time, the most interesting and important development has been the election. And my first or biggest source of joy is the fact that India and Indians have demonstrated a maturity in the democratic process, which is truly impressive. I think India has given Mr. Modi a third term for the great momentum they have. And India has also brought a bit more of the opposition into play, which is a very essential requirement in an effective democracy. I think this says a lot about when people say, do we have illiterate people? But we have wise people. We have a public which recognizes the needs of the moment. So to me, the democratic system demonstrated terrific maturity and effectiveness and reliability. But the people showed a lot of maturity in strengthening the balance between the government and the opposition, which is very critical for democracy. I see that perhaps as the biggest outcome of this phenomenal exercise of the polling and elections in India. So, talking about continuity, the point that you raised, I think, good thing is even if you go further back a few decades, the economic policy has been steady irrespective of who was in charge. We haven't had sharp left turns and right turns. So the direction is consistent. The guidelines for how the economy should behave have remained consistent. And I have to say that Mr. Modi's government has prioritized a number of ideas which were coming from the past, which they wouldn't call their own, and done execution in ways which I think is recognized globally, is faster, quicker, more effective. And for that execution, they have relied very heavily on technology. So whether it is the mobile telephony, whether it's the networks that come with it, or it is the whole area of computing and capacity of computing, or it is about spreading the message that digital India is important. I think in many different dimensions, the enabling infrastructure, the enabling mindset has catalyzed the pace of. So great ideas of the past and the great ideas of which they've created in this 10-year period have been accelerated through very innovative, very directed, focused, and prioritized use of technology. That's what I would say in terms of continuity, not just on policies, but also on picking ideas, relevant ideas from the past, picking up Aadhaar, which came before them, and driving all of these through very proactive and creative use of technology. And that continues.
A couple of things that you said, about the public. So I'm reminded of that lovely song, "Ye jo public hai, ye sab janti hai." So for our viewers and listeners who do not understand Hindi, because we have a global audience too, it is that the public knows best. Of course, it's not applicable in all cases, but in most of the cases, at least in India, which is the world's largest democracy, the public has once again shown that it does know what it is doing. So that, of course, has been a very heartening aspect of Indian politics. But we are not here to talk about politics. We are here to talk about the continuity part with Mr. Pawar. Actually, has been there in the tech field for almost like more than four decades, right? More than 4 decades.
5 decades.
5 decades, yes, absolutely. I myself have been around for more than 3 decades. So yeah, so 5 decades, and it's been a amazing journey. So it's the history that you have seen, how successive governments have built upon all that kind of technologies, and what the Modi government has also built on the kind of foundation that many other governments have laid down in the past. But interesting that the continuity now will be there, and that's the positive side of it. Talking about NIIT technologies, you have had this lovely match. We used to always talk about, here on one side you have training, skills development, which was so new at that point in time. I still remember when we used to have these conversations, nobody used to talk about skills development, but you started talking about skills development at that point in time. Today everybody is like, running helter-skelter, saying that how do I reskill and upskill
myself.
Yeah, but you have been doing it like almost like for last 3-4 decades. So if you can just quickly, take us through that little journey of yours,
Yeah.
and tell our viewers and listeners how things have changed? Because today, if you look at the scenario, and you're very well aware, with AI and Gen AI, a lot of Gen Z, Gen X, why Gen X, even the boomers, even the millennials, all these generations are very worried about what will happen tomorrow. I think some words of comfort or discomfort, whatever it be from you, would be very interesting.
Well, we should be excited about what technology is doing. There's no
Exactly.
reason to be worried. I mean, I remember once a colleague of mine who was a chief scientist, he was talking to teachers. And the teacher said, we are told that computers will take away our jobs. And he said something very telling. He said, all the teachers who think it will take away their jobs, yes, indeed, it will take away their jobs. So the idea is we have to embrace technology. We have to embrace in whatever form it comes. Because any powerful technology, every powerful instrument is double-edged. The knife in the kitchen, the sharper it is, the more efficient it is, but then it's a double-edged thing. Nuclear energy is an example. Any powerful tool is double-edged. And so the intent of the user becomes important. And therefore, my plea has always been to people that embrace technology when it starts coming, because you get the chance to learn. If you keep waiting on the side, it may become so advanced that you can only get affected by it negatively. And therefore, whether it was helping people write a program or helping people do data entry at that time, or get more sophisticated languages like fourth generation languages, cope with them, or when the graphical user interface came, people said, well, now nobody has to be doing anything. Or when voice came, then people said, well, even keyboarding is not there. All these changes have happened. And people who embraced those changes benefited. People who didn't would have had disadvantages. So the thing really is that the changes are happening at a faster and faster pace. And therefore, the time we have to respond to them is becoming shorter and shorter. And unless people recognize this fact, they may sit on the side and wait for longer than they should. And AI is no exception. AI is also a double-edged sword. You can use it for good and you can use it for bad. And if you want to be a neutral person who will decide that no one uses it for bad, only for good, then you better embrace it first. That's what I would say.
But Mr. Pawar, also, when you look at the kind of technologies that were there, about, say, even till about a decade back, why decade back, till even 5 years back, the pace at which those technologies progressed and the way at which in the last 2 years you're finding generative AI, probably, that is scaring many people, the incredible pace at which the developments are taking place. So if you could give, our viewers and listeners a kind of a perspective, a proper lens to look at these kind of, because I think there's no denying that the pace is incredible, that the treadmill is moving much, much faster than it was doing earlier. So just for instance, a classic example would be those who want to learn coding. Now, they suddenly realize, you find, articles put out, whether it's by the media, whether it's by OpenAI, whether by anybody, that, coding can now be automated. Everybody just needs to learn English, which you actually know that real coding doesn't. I mean, anybody who is going to be an ace programmer cannot really do that kind of stuff. So if you can help our viewers and listeners understand these kind of trends, because you have seen a lot more.
So when we were at IIT, we didn't have a computer sciences department. The computer was under the charge of the mathematics department. Mm-hmm. And it was one of those mainframes with, you could see it only across the other side of the glass. And there were guys with lab coats on because, it was sensitive to dust. And so we had to shove our paper through a little hole in the window or punch cards and get a paper back and so on. And therefore, if you gave your stuff today, you'll probably get the answer day after tomorrow. The computer may take a little bit of time, but there was latency, and there was no problem in that latency. And then suddenly that was broken when the PC arrived, because you had it on your desk. So you could enter something and get an answer quickly. And when the PC arrived, you still had to learn programming. And it took you many months to learn programming, right? So there was a latency in how quickly you can get ready, but in the IIT days, you couldn't even touch it, So that latency started becoming less and less. And with graphical user interfaces, as you know, you could, point and click. You didn't have to write complicated things to go from here to there. You could just do it on the screen. And then with voice coming in, you didn't even have to write. So now that's so visible today. So as the technology is improving, the intrinsic latency that it expects is getting shorter and shorter. So the technology is providing you the means to learn very quickly. So with Gen AI, it actually equips you to do things much faster. Right? Anything that you want to do, get you to do much faster. You're going for a holiday. Earlier we used to say, in the good old early days of internet, you can do queries, you can do something, and you do many days of queries and the net doesn't work and the system goes down. So you had to plan a little before the number of days when you wanted to travel. And then when internet became better, and then Google arrived. So you could ask a question and get an answer very quickly. But then the only thing was that Google, when you asked one question, it gave you 1 million hits. Now then you got to work through the hits to figure out what do I do. And then arrived Gen AI, which says, well, we'll read those million things which are coming on the hit, 10 million, 20 million. And if you ask us the question, we'll give you a very quick summary or an answer. Again, the latency is coming down. So you can take your decision much closer to the event, which means you can respond very much more quickly. Now, if you choose still to learn Fortran programming and didn't get onto fourth generation languages or graphical interfaces, then you're left behind because you don't have time.
Right.
So the tools which are becoming available are providing you the capability to respond quickly. And people do want to respond quickly. Everybody wants an answer yesterday. Right? You wanted the exit poll in much shorter time. The result started in the morning. You wanted the result immediately because you know it'll go left and right. So we get more impatient as a community at one level. At the other level, we want to rest and relax. And you can use Gen AI for both.
Well,
Create a music for you in your voice, a song that you liked in the past.
I feel the stock markets paid a price for the impatience of the poll exits. I mean, yes, we had everything on our lap, but then, of course, I think we lost for something like 30 lakh crore. But of course, that's weird.
Look at it this way. Someone made that money, right? Someone lost it.
Oh, yes.
Someone made the money. So you could have been a little patient. You know where you have to know where to be patient, but that's somebody's profession. Okay.
True.
They thrive on taking risks, and the risks and returns. Sometimes you get the return, someone else gets it. But net, someone made money, right?
I guess we always like it when we get the returns.
True.
So, Mr. Pawar, of course, in the interest of time, I mean, a lot of things to ask you at this point in time. Some quick words on the NIIT University, with something that is so close to your heart. Yeah. What is it that you're doing so differently that other universities are not doing? Or what is the kind of differentiating factor? Or what is it that you aim to achieve through this NIIT University?
So first of all, we were fortunate to have a lot of time to think about the university, building a university. So you may remember that in 1991, we started a program called the GNIT program, which became talent for the sector. At that time, we had the fortune to deal with a few very bright academics who helped us structure our journey forward. And the GNIT was meant to be equivalent to a graduate program, but we are a for-profit company, we can't give degrees. And then we had conceptualized that the next level will be an equivalent of a master's, and the next level in understanding of education would be equivalent to a PhD. And at that time itself became clear to us, and my advisors who were telling us this, they said, look, the GNIT you can do in NIIT, the others will need a different form of education and perhaps what happens in the formal system. So the seed was sown at 91, 92. And then there was the government was trying to look at privatization, private university bill, which never found presence or never got translated. But we started thinking about that. And then there was actually a big pressure, a recommendation from our professors from the IITs who said, you guys are making companies and making money, but do something for education. So confluence to many factors, we thought about the idea of a university. And in mid-90s, we started thinking about it. We had a very big group of advisors from industry, from academia, and so on. And so we said, okay, if we are going to make one university, we've done scale. We had done scale. We've touched more than 40 million people, 40 countries. So scale on skilling goes on as a task. We do it in banking now. We have one of the biggest trainers in the banking space, in addition to IT. So then our idea was, okay, if we have to build one university, we set for ourselves a period to think about it deeply. And we said it has to be distinctive. We want to make only one. And this is labor of love. It's our own money. It's not for profit. It has to work within the confines of the government regulation. But it should be incorporating ideas of the future. So we called it the University of the Future. Even today the line holds there, right? But we realized that if we have to do that, we have to try a lot of innovation. Many ideas, which may not be visualized in the reform that higher education is doing. Because, by the way, any country in the world that I've gone to, from US to Africa, reform in education is a challenge. It's always a challenge. Universities are far behind time in many ways. Their research may be ahead of time, but the application of that research into building people with their talent is a lag. So we said, now we have to solve some of these problems. So we defined 4 dimensions in which we wanted the university to be distinctive in the first 15 or 20 years. And we realized that universities last centuries, companies last years, and we are doing it for the long haul. And therefore, we'll have many more dimensions of distinctiveness to work on in the decades to come. The first 4 we took, we call them core principles. I'm just telling you what's distinctive is your question. So the first is the criticism that industry and academia are not connected well. So we said industry linked. That came from NIIT's experience. We were doing it. But we had to put it in the university. So it should be a benchmark of what industry linked education means. And by industry, I mean academia, society, government, wherever people go, wherever a student go. Second was technology based. Mm-hmm. Again, both these, as you can see, these 4 core principles were coming from the capability we had built in 3 decades by then. So we said becoming benchmark in these shouldn't take us too long, and I'm happy to say that we are a benchmark in how industry and academia should be connected. We have the best IT companies doing their master's program in spite of having their own training departments at the university on cybersecurity, for example, on data for the last many years. And we have many other implementations. So, for example, the last semester of our student, 8th semester from the last 15 years, was in industry, which now, over the last few years, people are saying we should do it as part of the reform. And so there are a dozen things in industry-linked core principle which we could talk of. We don't have time, but someday we should. Right. In technology-based, I think it's easy to comprehend. We started dabbling with technology in 1982. So it's only natural that the university is state-of-the-art in that space. So these 2 core principles, we think we are at benchmark level. The third was actually a challenge for higher ed in India, which is research. Mm. And having been on the boards of many of the institutions, the IITs and IIMs, I realized that you can't, if research is not in the DNA, then it's very difficult to change. So we've struggled in the IITs to bring them to a level where they're now doing good research. But, I was on the board for 15 years. We struggled. 15 years ago, finished my term. We struggled. Now they're moving in that direction. So we said, let's put it into our DNA, knowing very well that the research capability takes decades to form. Mm. But we used, and didn't say only research, we said discovery, research, and entrepreneurship. We clubbed those into one because today an idea to its market is now months at time. It's not decades. So the intellectual property rights story was that you did research in the lab, took you 10 years to do it, then you needed protection. So the government built an IP regime to say, okay, take advantage for all the money you spent. Today, a startup creates new things.
Yeah.
So we said this core principle is about discovery, innovation, research, and entrepreneurship. And so we have a startup culture in the university, which we're pushing. We do want to get known as a school of startups in the next 5, 7, 10 years as well.
Wow. Okay.
And the fourth core principle, and basic research, still that a lot has to happen. Publications have to happen. It takes time. You can't build a faculty. The biggest challenge for an institution is to build a strong faculty. You can get students in numbers, this country can. But we've chosen to be restricted in getting students by the faculty pool, by the developer that we do. And finally, the fourth core principle is perhaps the mother of all core principles. These we will get under our belt and keep adding, but this one, and the word is seamless. So philosophically, I would say that the scientific revolution depth that we had to do, and therefore specialization and ultra specialization. So all of that started getting mankind busy to go deep into more and more areas. But we forgot how to put it together. So more than 5 decades ago, the multidisciplinarity became a challenge for colleges. That the maths department doesn't speak to the computer department, who doesn't even know we have a humanities department. And so the specialization type of universities started coming, which were more institutions. And we said, now we have to put it back together. We've divided society into so many pieces, we can't join it together. So the divisions in society are in dozens of dimensions. Man and nature is a fundamental division, for example.
Right.
So in our campus, we got declared the greenest campus because we just decided that we are going to be as integrated to nature as possible. So we are perhaps the only institution which has earth air tunnels to cool and use a fraction of the energy that's required to cool things. We use the earth as geothermal, which is earth remains at 24 degrees if you go 12 feet down, pretty much anywhere.
Right.
So in the summers when it's 40 degrees, you put it under pipes. The earth warms it up when it's 0 degrees or 2 degrees. In the heat of summer, when air is coming at 41 degrees, it doesn't quite come to 24, but we use the earth for heating and cooling, which has a capex, but the operating costs are not about. Similarly, the place we went to in Imrana, we were told we can't give you water. Manage with the water which is under your feet. So we recycled 7% of the water. And so in Rajasthan, we have a green university. And now behind us is the hillock, the Aravali. We have a 4-kilometer range behind 100 acres. And we planted lakhs of trees. And our goal is next 25 years, that hillock of 1,000 acres should become a forest like it was 100 years ago. Already we are seeing birds and many small creatures come there. So seamlessness is also that. It's about disciplines, of course. It's about our integration with the village. So it's mandatory for our students to go and teach in the government village school. So seamlessness to me is perhaps the one which is the mother of sustainability in many forms. So we are trying to be distinctive in all of these. And our current chancellor is Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who wrote the NEP. And we keep pulling his leg that there are many ideas we've tried out which we found a place there. And sure they have, but of course that's a very powerful document. It's more aspirational than what we have thought of. So you have to visit it. It's a long talk. Maybe
we will actually, because in fact, actually, I was just thinking, even as we are talking, that yes, we will need to have a longer conversation on this.
And just one differentiating point. No university can claim, that before convocation got over, everybody is placed. We can. There's a seamlessness there as well.
That's a kind of a guarantee that I think will warm the pockets of the hearts of students.
And on World Environment Day, we're talking about university, building seamlessness with nature. Okay, that's very.
So the waterman of India, Rajendra Singh, belongs to Rajasthan, works closely with us.
Okay.
The tree man, Kishan Khanna, has done some work behind us. We have to green up the hillock. And so we are getting our students to live sustainability, not to learn it online or in a book. They have to live it. They have to plant a tree, and for 4 years, they have to make sure it lives.
So, viewers and listeners, you may have realized that as we were talking to Mr. Pawar, you had actually 5 decades of technology being covered in just this 45 minutes to 1 hour that we think. So, of course, while it may have been a little longish than most of our normal podcasts, you have to understand the amount of hats that Mr. Pawar wears. Whether it is skills and developments in NIIT Limited, then it was NIIT Technologies, which now is Co-Coach from last 4 years, I think so. 2019 and 2020, yes, after it was, I think, rebranded in 2019. And
after a year.
Yeah. So very interesting journey. And now, of course, now it is all about NIIT University. And I think one take home that would be very, very clear for most of our viewers and listeners, especially our younger kind of audience that we have out here, is that AI will not take away your job, but a person knowing AI will surely take away if you're not, up to speed as far as the newer technologies are concerned. So yes, technology is an ally. It is a double-edged sword, which we have been saying over quite a few years. And Mr. Pawar has only reconfirmed most of these things with his experience. So please take comfort that technology is an ally. It can be used well and can benefit all of us. So, Mr. Pawar, thank you very much for your time. And we hope to call you again to talk at length on your NIIT University, also on the kind of new things that you have done, and for India's education, how you're, sort of buttressing and strengthening India's education sector with your own efforts. So thank you very much for your time.
We are making sure that every one of our students learn GenAI.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Thank you, Mr. Pawar.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Jayant. See you next week.
See you next week, Leslie. That's it for this episode. If you have any questions, drop in a hey on
at El Demonte on Twitter
and Jayant and Kolla on LinkedIn.
This podcast is produced by Deepti Ahuja. Audio editing has been done by Sanju Abraham.
And the video editor of this podcast is Kuljit Singh.
Looking forward to meeting you guys next week.
Thank you and bye-bye.
To stay updated on this podcast, follow us at HT Smartcast on all the major social media platforms. To listen to more such podcasts, log on to www.htsmartcast.com.